Hey guys, it's Courtney. I recently did a review on the ARTEZA Everblend markers, the 60 count set, and I recently received the 120 count set. So I'm going to be doing a little bit different of a review here, but as the same as the 60 set, this comes in a carrying case. Same type of case, obviously, it's much bigger. They do pretty much come in color family when you get them, but I rearranged mine in the order that I prefer to have them in. I have swatched out all of these previously, so I kind of know what will blend with what. You can see that there is Velcro holding the case together on the top as well as the sides, so this folds flat and kind of like, I guess it's kind of more like a book where you can kind of flip through and grab whatever markers you want. And it easily closes back up and also has a shoulder strap, so it's easy to kind of carry around if you are traveling or going to any crops with these markers. So like I said, I did go ahead and swatch all of these out, and I created my own color chart. There may be more out there that people have done, but this one seems to work for me. So I will leave this on my blog as well as a blank one if you want to, if you have these markers and you want to print it out. I arranged these in my main colors there in rainbow order. I have a separate section for skin tones, neutrals, grays, and then the fluorescents on the bottom. So that will be over on my blog. If you guys aren't able to print it off from my blog and you want a copy of it, just email me. I'll be glad to send it to you. So we are going to compare these ARTEZA Everblend markers to the top of the line Copic markers. And I don't expect them to be an exact match because let's face it, Copics are the best of the best and ARTEZAs are very high quality, but a lot more affordable. So here I'm just kind of showing you the ARTEZAs have a bullet nib as well as a chisel nib. The Copics have a brush nib as well as a chisel nib, and they are both labeled as to what end is what. They both have that little band around the chisel or the brush nib. And here you can kind of compare the two nibs here. One is the bullet, one is the brush, and then the chisel nibs are very similar. The ARTEZA is a little bit wider and shorter, and the Copic is a little bit longer but not quite as wide. So very similar in the chisel nibs. So here we're going to do a little bit of comparison between the Copics and the ARTEZAs as far as their properties and how well they blend. So first I am going to start off with the Copic marker, and I picked both the coral for both the ARTEZA and the Copic. Not that they're identical in color, but they're very similar. We're first going to try the Copic marker. I'm going to use the brush nib here and kind of see how fine of a line that I can get with that brush nib, just using the tip of the marker with a little squiggly line as well as a straight line, and then how much you can actually fill in with the side of the nib. Next, for the ARTEZA, I'm going to use the bullet nib, again, starting off with a little wavy line, then a straight line, and then kind of coloring in a larger area, which does take a little bit more work with the ARTEZA for the bullet nib because it is a bullet nib. There's no give to it. Testing out the chisel nibs here on both of these markers, and they seem to be pretty similar. What I do notice about ARTEZAs is that you don't get those streaky lines when you're filling in a larger area as much as I did with the Copics using the chisel nib. So that's a good thing. You usually only have to go over the area once. So next we're going to go ahead and blend two colors that are very similar. First, starting off with the Copics, the R32 and R35. You know that these colors will blend together because they are both in the R30 family. Going to lay out some of that lightest color, add some of that darker color, then blend that out again with the lightest color. These colors are very similar to one another, so they are going to blend pretty easily. And you can see that I get a pretty good gradient there. Next, moving on to the ARTEZAs, using two colors that are actually really, really similar. So it wasn't the best two colors to use to find out how well they blend. But again, starting off with that lightest color and laying that down, adding a little bit of the darker color, and then blending that out with that lightest color again. Even though these colors are pretty similar, I did get a very good gradient. I find that these blended very well together. It's just a little bit different with the bullet nib versus the brush nib. So next we're going to test out blending out two colors that don't necessarily blend together. So we're going to use a pink and a yellow, and you can see that I'm using the Y04 and the RV23. Being one ends in a 3, one ends in a 4, I should be able to blend these pretty well. Going to lay out some of that yellow, then flick in some of that pink, going back to the yellow and back to the pink as many times as I need to go back and forth just to make sure that these blend together. These colors are obviously not meant to blend together, but I kind of just wanted to see how they would react with one another. Going to do the same thing with the ARTEZAs. Now, they do have a numbering system, and I'll be quite honest with you, I don't use it. I don't know whether they're numbered for any specific reason, but I just kind of pick ones that seem to blend well together. So I use kind of a darker yellow, kind of more of a golden yellow. I wish I would have picked more of a bright one. Maybe I would have had better results, but I did the same thing, just kind of going back and forth, seeing how these will blend together. I didn't get great results with this, but like I said, that could have been because of the colors that I chose weren't the best colors to be used here. But it wasn't bad. So next we're going to test out the colorless blender. In my first review, I had a hard time using the colorless blender from the ARTEZA markers. I just wasn't able to get any results with it. So we're going to test this out with the new set that I have here. So I'm just going to scribble on some color here. This is the R32 and the same pink that I used for the blend that we just did. I'm just going to scribble on some color and then take my colorless blender and go right there in the middle over this area a few times, because pinks can be difficult. Pinks and reds can be difficult, and purples. But I'm just going to kind of see how the colorless blender reacts. You can see that that definitely moves around that Copic color, and honestly got the same exact results with the ARTEZA. So I don't know, maybe I have a dry marker from the first one, or maybe they did improve it, because this colorless blender works very well, same as the Copic. So last, we are going to go ahead and color an image. I'm going to take this little apple from a honeybee stamp set, and I just wanted something that's very simple, just to kind of get an idea of how they blend and if they bleed or not. So I'm going to stamp this out with blackout ink by Ink on 3 twice. And by the way, this is a piece of Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock. So I'm going to start off with my Copics. I'm showing you the colors that I'm using there. And like always, I am going to start off with my lightest color to map out my darkest areas. I'm not worried about getting my coloring being phenomenal here. I'm just trying to get an idea of how well they blend and how realistic of a look that you would potentially get if you actually took your time coloring with both the Copics and the ARTEZAs. Also, reds and pinks tend to bleed a little bit more than any other color family that I work with, that I use for the Copics anyway. So I kind of wanted to see how they do with the ARTEZAs. I'm putting a lot of ink down here. I'm blending and blending and blending probably a little bit more than I normally do, just because I want to see how much each one of these bleed. So I'm just leaving a highlight in the center of these little apples here, because these would be more of a round object, so they would have a center highlight. So I am keeping that consistent with both of them. I did try to pick colors that are very similar to one another so that we can get a true comparison. For the ARTEZAs, again, going to start off with my lightest color. I did learn that you do have to saturate the paper just a little bit more with the ARTEZAs than you do with the Copics to get that good blend. So I am starting off with that lightest color, which is actually a pink, and I'm going to go over the darkest areas and bring that out a little bit further than I normally would with the Copic. So the only white space that I'm actually leaving here is in the very center where the actual highlight will be. Whereas if this was the Copics, I probably wouldn't add this much ink, but I do find that these do blend the more saturated the paper is. So you can see I'm just leaving a little bit of white space there. Next, going in with my darkest color and just going over those very darkest areas, basically just outlining the image here, making sure that I keep a center highlight. My darkest color is a very dark color for both combinations that I used. You guys have probably, if you've watched any of my videos before, you know that bringing in those scary dark colors is what is going to give you that contrast that maybe you're struggling with. So try to bring in just a teeny tiny bit of that really scary dark color, and you'll see a huge difference with your coloring, whether it be with Copics, ARTEZAs, or any other alcohol marker that you own. So basically just keeping my shadows and my highlights in the same area and finishing off again with this highlight color, this pink color. And I have to say that I really, really liked the results. I got the contrast I was looking for, and they blended beautifully. And I don't know whether you guys can see on camera, but actually the Copics bled a little bit more than the ARTEZAs. I did have a couple coloring errors, totally my fault, but the Copics bled, the ARTEZAs did not. So let's talk about the last thing, which is the most important, which is price. So the Copics, obviously top of the line, most expensive. I typically purchase mine from Blick, and they are $5.85 per marker. ARTEZAs come in this pack of 120. They are $118.89 for 120 markers, which includes the colorless blender that makes these 99 cents per marker. So if you are just starting out with coloring or just want to try something different, this is definitely a steal. Definitely a high quality marker that you can learn to color with and get great results. Hope this was helpful, guys. Have a great day. Bye.